influencers are so accessible, like way more accessible than we think they are. Someone like Amy Porterfield obviously doesn't answer her own email, but she checks her DMs on Instagram. If she's running a competition or something, like you better believe she's going to know who the winners are. She knows who's showing up in her groups. Like it is easier than ever to do this.
Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klinck. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 127 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck, and I'm excited for today's show because it's the natural first place. It is the first interview that would have to be the very first guest on the newly rebranded, renamed show. When I thought about who would be the only person who could possibly be the first guest on a podcast that is named about being a badass, this person is the only person who came to mind. And if you've been with me and been listening to my podcast for a while, you might just have an idea who I'm talking about. It's a repeat guest. It's someone who is the most popular guest I've ever had. And it's someone who is just a plain old badass. It's Tarzan Kay. Now, Tarzan is my friend. She's my original email mentor. She's the one who, if you like my emails, thank her. If you don't, blame her, because she's the one who really kind of unleashed the monster that I've become with my emails. Now, I've kind of taken what she taught me and put my own spin on it, but I wouldn't be sending the emails I am today if it weren't for her. But more importantly, she is the person who helped me or inspired me to create the Fans First Society, my signature kind of offer on the business side stuff, because she sent me this crazy little note last Easter telling me that I had the X factor on steroids that is something that, you need to be successful online. And that kind of became what challenged me to figure out what it was that, was making me successful in the online space. And so, she is a dear friend, and she's just a plain old badass in her own right. She is a launch strategist, started as a copywriter, and, she is helping people create awesome businesses. And since I've already had her on twice to talk about kind of copy and email, we were trying to think about what should we talk about. And we were kind of talking about this last fall. And candidly, I recorded this episode, the actual interview last fall, before we had the idea to rebrand. And so I had it in the can, was trying to figure out where to put it. And I said, she's got to be my first interview for this newly rebranded podcast. So I'm not sure, but I suspect at the end of the episode, I probably refer to the show with the old name, but you're here. And so, it is what it is. But what we talk about in this episode is kind of how it is that we have managed to connect with influencers. Now, neither one of us teaches that as a big part of what we do, but we also both recognize that those connections have been hugely important in our building our business. And so for us, it was a natural thing to just have a conversation about. And what you'll find is I'm interviewing her, but she also asked me questions. So we just are kind of talking. And I think it's something you're going to get a ton of value from, because the reality is that, when you're starting out, if you don't yet have a big audience, one of the quickest ways for you to really kind of, build a following is to connect with influencers. And, I think Tarzan used the words like, riding people's coattails. And there's nothing wrong with that as you're starting out. Now, as you kind of expand and grow, you stop doing that and you come into your own right. But obviously my story is one where I did that. I built my business largely by becoming the legal guy inside of Amy Porterfield's communities. That was kind of how things started for me. And then I built a connection and that really snowballed and made things so much better. So it's a great interview. You should enjoy it. And you should go find Tarzan because she's just, someone that everyone should be following and everyone should know and see what she's doing. So without further ado, here is my interview with Tarzan Kay. Welcome back to the show, Tarzan. How are you today?
Well, Bobby, right before you hit record, I was about to share all these secrets because I was so excited. I am so excited to be here. First time three-peat with my friend Bobby. But I'll have to share the secrets for after.
Yeah, if you're not going to share the good stuff, I may just find someone else for a three-peat before you. No! Just hold this in reserve. We've talked email to death on our last two episodes, so we're not going to talk email, even though you and I both have a lot of fun talking about email.
We could.
But we're actually going to talk about something completely different. We're going to talk about getting in front of influencers. And I shared with you before we started recording, and you didn't even know this. So listeners, I first ran across Tarzan when she was on, I think it was episode 200 of Amy Porterfield's podcast where, I don't know, there were 5 or 10 different people who did these little snippets that did something. I don't even remember what it was. But I hear, oh, she's Amy's copywriter. About that time, I needed a copywriter. So I was like, So I reached out and I hired you. And you didn't even know that.
Well, I do now, but I'm not surprised because I get a lot of that. A lot of people that heard me. Now I've been a guest on Amy's podcast, so there's a whole episode, but she has mentioned my name just here and there. And it's amazing how these influencers who have that many people in their audience, they only have to mention you once or twice. And there's this flow of people that just want to come to you because I want what that person has. Therefore I have to work with the people they work with. And if they mention you again and again, oh boy, you are brace yourself.
Yeah. Well, I've had, we can call it serendipity. We can call it alignment. We can call it whatever we want, but I've had kind of similar things happen. Like my first episode on her show, of course, I only get bonus episodes. I don't get episode numbers like you do, Tarzan, because
Thus far.
Yeah. But anyway, so my first one was about GDPR and it came out. She released it on a Monday, I think it was, which was April 30th. My first webinar for my first successful launch was May 1st. You can kind of imagine that might have worked well. And then earlier this year, in the middle of a card open, we were talking about just one of my crazy email card opens. I was doing a Q&A with her in her DCA group. And she says, what are you doing right now? And I said, I'm launching. And she tells people to go buy. Again, you can imagine that kind of went well. So we both know the power of influencers, but also now we've both experienced the other side where people try to connect with us, where we're the influencers. So we wanted to talk about how to do it and how to do it right and just be honest about what's involved. So why don't you talk first before we talk about general principles? Like how was it that you kind of got connected with Amy and became her copywriter?
Oh, I would be happy to share that story. It's a good one. But I just want to back up a second. My coach, Ron Reich, one of the things that he has taught me about, he calls this riding the coattails. And I think riding the coattails has a bit of a bad rap, but I have totally ridden the coattails of some influencers, but also I'm happy for other people to ride my coattails. So I think as we talk about this, reaching out to influencers, connecting with people so that you can have their connections, some people might be ugh, that seems icky, but actually it comes full circle. So some people that are a few steps ahead of you are going to help you. And then your job is to pay it forward to the people that are a few steps behind you, which I absolutely do. Right now, I basically every lead that I get, because I don't do done for you copy anymore. it all goes to my students. So just wanted to talk about that for a second. But how I met Amy. So I was about 8 months into my business and I was still sort of figuring out what my niche was. And there was this email copywriting competition. And it was hosted by Joanna Wiebe, who is the creator of Copy Hackers. People in the copywriting world know her as like the mother of conversion copy. She's like, you know, I would consider myself like a protege of hers. She has many proteges and people who have learned from her. Joanna's the host, and along with Rye Schwartz, who at the time was Amy's sole copywriter, did all of her launch stuff. I didn't know who he was, but I was like, great, okay, I'm not just gonna do this competition, I'm gonna win this competition. I don't think I even really understood why it was important, but I just had this sense that it was gonna be important, that winning this thing would be really good for my business.
Now I know why we get along so well, because again, I got into her world because there was a competition, an engagement contest. I was like, I'm winning that damn thing. And that was what, you know, got me on her radar. So I just love that it was like competition. Oh yeah, we're winning this.
Oh yeah. I'm not just going to show up. I'm going to win it. And another side note, influencers are so accessible, like way more accessible than we think they are. Someone like Amy Porterfield obviously doesn't answer her own email, but she checks her DMs on Instagram. If she's running a competition or something, like you better believe she's going to know who the winners are. She knows who's showing up in her groups. Like it is easier than ever to do this. But back up a second. I'm doing this contest. I'm going to win. My husband was like, what are you doing? Because I didn't do anything for 3 days other than like it was an email competition. So I was like writing emails and hustling votes, and I won. And as having won that competition, I also started this friendship with Rye Schwartz. And Rye, I think like we talked on the phone a little bit, but you know, he had seen these emails that won the competition that were pretty good. Like they weren't even promo emails, but they were engaging and they were funny. So he was like, okay, Tarzan can write. We started this relationship. We would like talk on the phone. He's a fellow Canadian, so we actually could talk on our cell phones, which is, in this day and age, I feel like is a pretty intimate thing to do. Anyway, we would talk on the phone, and in the meantime, this is important. I had written an email that I thought was particularly good. It was about Gord Downie, who is like, Americans probably don't know who Gord Downie is, but he is a Canadian hero, and he recently passed away a couple years ago. I wrote an email about it. I posted it on Facebook, which I almost never do. I was just like, I think this is a really good email. He was my friend on Facebook, and having seen that, he went and joined my list. Therefore, he could see that I was actually knew what I was doing. And then after like a couple months, this is a couple months after the copywriting challenge, he said to me in a conversation, he said, hey, you know, I'm going to be moving on pretty soon and doing my own thing. And Amy's going to need a new copywriter. I'm going to be looking at passing the torch. I think it might be you. I was so excited. Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. And it took I think it was maybe 8 or 9 months later, probably 9 months, because that seems to be the way things are created. I did hear from Amy, and she reached out to me, and that was our first project.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what's great about that story is you connected to an influencer by connecting to another, I mean, you could say kind of an intermediate level influencer. You connected to Rye, who then connected you to someone else. And I think that's a great point, but I actually want to step back to the point you made, not about your story, because it's a good story, but where you did that aside and said people are reachable. And they are. What a lot of people don't realize, I think, is, and I've dealt with a lot of influencers. And again, yes, they're not in their inbox for the most part. Other than me, I'm a weird person. I still get in my inbox. But most of them are not in their inbox. But you know what? They're people. And this is one of the things that I'm sure you've seen. Like you go to these events and people are fangirling or fanboying to someone. And I'm like, don't do that. Stop that. If you want, because first of all, to them, you know, a lot of the people that we maybe look up to as big influencers in the online space, I mean, 3 years ago, they were not necessarily huge. And so they're still regular people. And if you want to connect with them, you need to set it up where you are not this, I don't know the right way to say it, but it can't look like you're a groupie or something like that. You have to approach them like a peer. And that's kind of funny because I remember Amy telling a story that when she approached you, you kind of did that. You kind of said, like, you immediately put these weird rules that most copywriters would have been like, oh, you want me to, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. Can you talk about what it was that you did there?
Yeah, okay. I wasn't going to tell that story. I was like, I don't know if this is relevant, but I will tell it. So when Amy first approached me, I forget what she was asking me to write a couple of things. She needed a really fast turnaround for one thing. And she also needed, it was like if she had possibly, I don't know about, who knows what might have happened to my boundaries, but the project wasn't like super juicy. I mean, it was Amy Porterfield. So of course that was super juicy, but the project had a really tight timeline and it wasn't very interesting work. And also, and this is part of the story that actually I've never told before, I was newly pregnant. So I was like, I already had like I had like a 2 or 3 week lead time before I could take on a new project. I was newly pregnant. So I was like so tired. Anyway, so I went back to Amy and I was like, to myself, I was like, I can't believe I'm saying this. But I just said, I was like, something to the tune of like, I would love to work with you. This sounds so exciting. But actually, I'm not available for like 3 weeks or like whatever. Now, Amy is definitely used to having everyone bend over backwards and do whatever because she's Amy. And bless her, like she is the best person to work for. She's great to work for and she does not take advantage of people. I, on the other hand, was like Ms. Boundaries over here. Like, I don't work Fridays. I'm not available for 3 weeks. And I don't know if I said anything about the project, but I just basically, it was a no. And I was like, deep breath, Tarzan. I don't know what you're doing, but I guess this is how it's done. But sure enough, about a month, maybe like 3 weeks to a month later, she came back to me with a much more interesting project that was completely on my timeline. The project was like, she came to me with like, hey, Tarzan, we have this funnel that's not working as well as it used to. Can you figure out why and can you fix it? Like that is a miles away from like, can you write show notes for my podcast? Yep. That's a completely different job, a much higher level of trust. And I used to sort of use the term like come in like the alpha, but that sounds a bit icky. Like I wasn't trying to make Amy my beta at all. But our very first project that we worked together on, there was like a really high level of mutual respect. And Amy, like she really does have a very high standard for her service providers. So I didn't want to say yes to a project that I didn't have time for and like give her, like also I've never been inexpensive even from the beginning. So I didn't want to like make her pay all this money for work that was not even my best. So I had to set those boundaries like so that I could deliver the quality of work that I knew she would be expecting from me.
Yeah. And again, listeners, I think I want you to get, the point of this is not Amy. The point of this is that if you want to connect with an influencer, you have to own your expertise, own your presence, own that you belong in the room. And it's hard, right? Because we all deal with imposter syndrome. Actually, Tarzan, I think, probably never dealt with imposter syndrome.
No, I totally do.
But most of us definitely do. And so, I point that out because I've seen that. And again, I hope listeners don't take this the wrong way, but the same thing happens to me at like events. People come up and like ask me meekly if they can take a picture with me. I'm like, of course you can take a picture with me, and they're surprised like that. I know that they're my customers. And I'm like, of course I know that you're one of the people who's invested, a lot of money in me. And so own that. If you want to build the connection of a peer or something similar to a peer, I think that's what you need to do if you want a long term. But also, I think the important thing to get is that often it's that first connection that you build that then opens all kinds of other doors. And you talked about it with Rhyme, and that opened the door to Amy, which then opened the door to all these other things. But also, one thing I did want to talk to you about, Tarzan, is because you and I have both kind of had things come of being involved in affiliate launches and how that can lead to good things. So why don't you tell that story of how you've had affiliate launches work well, and then I'll tell, a similar story.
So affiliate launches, I wish I had the numbers, but I don't have them offhand. But I will say I do make multiple six figures from my affiliate products. They make not quite as much as my own programs, but they are like super duper profitable for me. And what I really love about having affiliate offers is like, it's a natural way to fill in for services that I don't offer. So for a long time, I promoted B School. A lot of my students need it. It's almost like, hey, I would say this is a prerequisite. Like if you haven't done that, you probably don't have that level of experience. Now it's sort of gotten to the point that that's even like too beginner. But anyway, I have promoted that in the past, and often those customers that buy, say, B School through me, you would get some one-on-one time with me. Those students would often go on to either work with me privately or join one of my programs. So when choosing an affiliate offer, I think it's really important really important. Like this probably is the most important. Like choose something that you've done and gotten results from, but also something that fits in context of your other offers. Like I have my program, Email Stars, which is all about launching with email. In order for people to get to a place where they're actually ready for that, a typical path is you take B School, and then you take Digital Course Academy, and then you take Email Stars. Like that's a great order for people to go in. Therefore, like it makes perfect sense. Of course I should promote these. I promote those as hard as I I treat them like my own launches. That was a lot in one answer.
Well, yeah, but so that's good. But I was thinking about, you've talked about how because of your performance as an affiliate in the DCA launch that happened back in January, you had some unbelievable connections to influencers built that way.
Yeah, totally. Okay. That's where the connection is. I've got it now. Okay. So this has happened to me a couple of times. But particularly, so some of your listeners may not know this, but when you are in an affiliate launch that's like really well organized, there's an affiliate manager. Often there will be a Facebook group that's just for affiliates, and it'll be a small group, right? Because it's not like there's thousands of people in there. Usually it's like 100 or maybe even less. And what happens is there's something that is designed to keep us all laying awake at night and working way harder than we should, which is leaderboards. And there's leaderboards almost every single day. So when the first webinar is announced, there'll be a leaderboard with like who's doing the best on leads to the initial webinar. So there's the leads contest, and then there's a sales contest, and there's usually leaderboards every day. It's always really interesting to see who's at the top of the leaderboard for opt-ins and who's at the top of the leaderboard for sales, because it's always really different. Like, because I'm working with a small list, I'm rarely at the top of the leaderboard or near the top for the leads contest. And then the sales contest comes in, and all of a sudden everyone falls over, and there's like, who's this Tarzan? Like in Amy's last launch, when we were both promoting Digital Course Academy, the first sales leaderboard, I was number 2.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out the math on that one. I was like, Tarzan just bought herself a house or something. I wasn't quite sure. I was like, what in the world happened?
Oh my God. I nearly fell out of my chair. But so if you think about the people who are in position 1, 3, 4, and 5, they're like household names in the industry, right? And then here's this Tarzan. So this is a primary example of like, hey, now those people, because anytime there's a leaderboard, everyone gets tagged. So that means like those people just got tagged and saw that like Tarzan is number 2, and who is this Tarzan? So on the first round of Digital Course Academy, when I promoted it earlier this year, or maybe this episode, let's just say January 2019, first time I ever promoted it. I think I ended up like fourth on the sales leaderboard. I immediately pitched like everyone on the top 10 who had a podcast to go on their podcast. And I had this point of connection, like, yo, I'm one of Amy's top affiliates. I have at the time I had 3,000 people on my email list. Hey, number two person knows that he has 500,000. So of course he wants to hear from Tarzan, who's creeping up behind him with her little powerful list of 3,000 leads, 3,000 subscribers. So that's another example of a small group where it's really easy to stand out.
Yeah. And I think the key thing is if you find yourself in one of those groups in an affiliate launch scenario, that is a perfect place because like you said, well, first of all, let's back up. You're seen as a peer because you're in the group, right? So you're automatically given some authority. And like you said, I mean, the same thing happened to me and same story. I never cracked, I think, higher than 19th on the leads list this time around. And I was top 10 from the beginning on sales. And, my point of contention, you're the only person I think who was above me or close to me who had a list about my size. Everybody else, I think, on the top 10 had these huge lists besides the two of us.
Shout out to Laura Belgray. She also does a lot with, I wouldn't call her list small, but in the grand scheme of things, yes, she's working with a small list.
Yeah. But yeah, so, we were on there, but the same thing happened to me. I was asked to be, I didn't even have to ask. I was asked to be on the Boss Dad / Boss Mom podcast as a result of just participating in that group. And so I think it's an important lesson that when you're in there, or if you're doing a summit or anything like that, where you're going to be with a group of other people, you should take a chance to actually connect with the people and you can, get some big mileage out of it.
Okay. So I want to turn the table a bit here and ask you a question, because I've seen you do an incredible job of positioning yourself in private Facebook groups. And I think that's been really big for you in terms of connecting with Amy.
Yep.
But a lot of people don't want, they're nervous about showing up in Facebook groups because they've seen other people and it feels pitchy and salesy and it doesn't feel authentic.
Well, so there's a couple things. And let me back up because I remember hearing that advice forever, go into Facebook groups and engage and all this. And the people who were teaching it were saying go into 50 a day or I don't know how many they'd teach, but they say go into a bunch, right? And that's just dumb. No offense to those people, but that's dumb. At the end of the day, you've got to focus. If you want it to work, you have to basically say, I am going to be a presence in this group. And again, I essentially did it. There was more than one group, but I did it in one influencers group. That's what I did. And I was there and I committed to be there so that I would basically get to be known. And again, this is what I mentioned. It started with a silly engagement contest. I was just trying to win an engagement contest, found I liked not talking about the legal stuff, talking about the other stuff. But the other thing, and this is what I've told my listeners and anybody who's in any of my programs, I've told them many times, you don't go in and start asking questions. That's the other thing people do. They go in and we've all seen it. You go in and some person who you don't see very often posts this clear market research question on a pane of some sort with a colored background. That doesn't work either. You've got to basically go in there and just be there and be part of the community. But I also want to be clear to people, this doesn't work for everybody. And it won't work for everybody for a couple of reasons. One is you've got to just commit to do it. Literally, I have penciled into my ideal week that I have 2 hours a day that I focus on social media engagement. Most people won't do that, but that's what I've done. And to me, it is an investment that's worthwhile because, now, and the advantage of it is once you build up the credibility in one of those communities, I don't have to show up as much in Amy's groups now. Quite honestly, when there's a question that people think that I could answer, I get tagged. And so I just look at my notifications and I can go answer it and provide value. But the big key is just providing value. And that was how I connected with Amy. I just was in her groups providing a ton of value on a regular basis. And initially, I guess she kind of noticed, but it wasn't her. It was, her community manager at the time. first, took notice and fell in love with me, not of me, but there's this guy who's helping a ton. So it's less work for me kind of a thing. And so, that was how the first connection was made. And I've told this story a lot. I was sitting, this was, it started in her B school bonus group. And so I get this email from Amy from Amy Porterfield is what it shows up in my inbox. And I just assumed it was some kind of bonus being released. And so I open it up and there's a voice message, and I open the voice message and I listen, and it's her asking me to come and teach lessons in her Systems at Scale program about the legal stuff. So again, and here's an important lesson for everyone, going back to that act like you belong thing. I ran downstairs, told my wife, being giddy, and then I run back upstairs after my wife's like, who, what? I don't get it. I run back upstairs and I come back and I type this thing. I said, well, and I try to not be over eager and basically,
yeah, you get your fangirl moment out of the way, right? Like jump up and down, go tell your spouse, and then chill the F out, and then deliver your calm and collected reply.
Right. Well, and the funny thing was, so it's kind of funny, and I didn't even at the time think about it, but I basically, and the true story of my sent is in my response to that, I said, well, hey, I'd be happy to. And I said, but right now I'm literally preparing for launch. And this week I'm doing trainings in my private Facebook group about the GDPR. So to make it tough to record. At which point I immediately get a response back. Hold up, wait, what? You're doing training on GDPR. How much are you charging for that? I said, no, it's free. So that again was the thing where, again, I kind of did something boundary wise without even meaning to, just saying I'd love to, but I don't have time, in the short term, we'll have to figure out a time that works. But then me mentioning that I was doing this other training is what got me on her podcast to talk about GDPR, which that was actually more important for me than being in her Systems at Scale, which is only something that's a bonus for people who sign up for other programs through her affiliate links. But go ahead, Tarzan.
Well, I was in a really similar situation in B school when I was first starting my business. And this is a little bit harder now because the group is bigger, but in my year, which was 2016, there were about 2,000 people in the group. So you could get noticed if you were really participating. And I showed up a lot, and I just answered anytime someone had a question about copy. I was there. I was very consistent about it. And I had this whole light bulb moment. Nobody told me you can get clients from Facebook groups. I was like, oh, look at all these people. They could be my clients, and people are contacting me. And so that was great. That was step one. And then I sent Marie Forleo a great testimonial. I really took time to write it. My success story was off the hook. And that story went out. It was it made it into one of her pre-launch emails. And when I saw that happened, this was it used to be a little bit more difficult. I don't know. She does screen her affiliates, but at this time, the offer for anyone to be affiliate was not out there. I had never seen it. It wasn't public, but I reached out to her team and was like, hey, thanks for featuring me. I would love to be an affiliate. They checked out my brand, and I not only went on to promote B School, but I also won this award from Marie another thing I totally made happen. She had this award for first time affiliates called the Because You're Awesome Award. And so the thing with in B School, it's really hard to make the leaderboard when you're a smaller fish. There's just so many big time promoters. It's her way of honoring the people who are starting out and aren't making as many sales, but they're still working really hard. So I got this Because You're Awesome award. And then I think it was about 2 years later, I was invited. There was a really small group of affiliates for the Copy Cure. I've asked the team so many times, are you ever doing this again? They always tell me no. There was one time that they did an affiliate launch for the Copy Cure, and I was invited to be an affiliate. That was such a home run for me. It felt like free money. It was such an easy launch. So there's another way, just showing up consistently in a Facebook group and then kind of taking that to the next level just paid off for me again and again.
Well, and that's the thing. I still get tagged in there. they clearly in their group, they have their community manager knows the people who do things. And so like literally I got tagged in the B School group this morning because someone had asked a question about needing a licensed US lawyer. So I was one of like 3 or 4 different people who got tagged there. And you know, I never really tried that hard, but what happened, I think the reason why I still get tagged was because B School was happening while the GDPR mess was happening. And I kind of rose to fame and I was giving training away. And so like, you know, some of the people on Team Porterfield who are like contractors who work for actually like took my GDPR training. And so, I mean, I think they still know me from that. But I think the point of all of this discussion is that with all of this, you and B School and me and Amy's group, it was organic. It was not, it wasn't a, let's go in here and try to make sales. If you view it that way, I don't think it works.
No. And so I think this is important because it's like, okay, so if I want benefits from this influencer relationship, how can I go in like being open and not like trying to get something? I think it's really important, and you've done such an amazing job of this in your business, Bobby, is to like connect with lots of people. Don't get hooked on the idea that one person, like this one particular influencer is going to be your person and they're going to like do all these things for you. Just like consistently show up with the people that you want to show up in front of, who you want to get noticed with. I don't know how that's going to happen. Someone that I've been following for a long time is Kate Northrup. And I've read both of her books. Like I follow her on Instagram. She's someone that I would really like to get to know. I don't want something from her, but I know that there's like something there. I want to learn from her. I want to be connected to her. I joined her mastermind the moment she opened it. I was like, yeah, that's for me. So I also like when it comes to connecting with influencers, I am happy to pay to get in front of them. It has always paid off for me.
Well, and that's funny that you mentioned that before we hit record. And I mean, on my Facebook strategy, it's perfect that we talk about this because what I've told people is you're going to have more success in someone's paid group, like showing up there and delivering value, both because the influencers, I think, care. I mean, you naturally care more about your group of paid customers because you want to make sure that they're taken care of. But also, here's the other piece. If you're hoping to get some of this collateral benefit of people hiring you, those are people who've paid to buy a product. And so, you know, and I had this funny conversation with people. I will have people like go onto these free groups and ask questions that are clearly addressed in that influencer's paid product. And I'm sitting there saying, well, if you don't want to pay for that product, why in the world would anyone invest in you? So it's a funny thing, but it's funny also that you mentioned Kate because she was in the DCA launch with both of us. And then she was at BBD Live, James Wedmore's event. And because, you know, I'd been in the group, I, you know, came up to her. She was one of the speakers and we chatted and just had a great time because, you know, we had connected. She knew who I was from being in this affiliate launch together. And so it's kind of like we come full circle sometimes, Tarzan, when we talk about these things.
I don't think it's a coincidence.
Yeah, listeners, we didn't have it planned. I promise you that much.
Bobby prepared no questions.
Yeah, literally.
He didn't prepare anything.
I mean, I rarely do, but this time I definitely didn't. I was like, we're just gonna have a chat about this. But I also wanted to go back and talk for a second because you were talking about this mind bend issue, and I do bring this point up because I talk a lot about giving and serving and those things. And what I tell people is, it's this weird, you've got to get your mind around it. If you're giving to get something, it won't work. The way that you actually get something by giving is when you give without expectation. And that's when all of a sudden the universe, whoever it is, comes and pays you back. And so I always highly recommend that you just have to give and you just have to show up, like you said, in those groups and it'll work out. So,
okay, well, I have a question for you. If you don't want to answer it, you'll have to answer it and then edit it out after. But I know that you joined a mastermind this year, and I'm curious how that has connected you and like, how has that been for you in terms of connecting with influencers?
So, I mean, if you're in the right mastermind, it's a no-brainer because a couple of things. Number one, you're with peers. But again, I want to back up and talk about masterminds for a second. because there are some things that people call masterminds, which are not masterminds. And it can be for different reasons, but one of them, like I heard somebody talk about a mastermind that had 150 people in it. I said, that's not a mastermind. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's not a mastermind. In a mastermind, you should be able to connect with everybody. Some people would say that James Wedmore's, which is what I'm in, is bigger than it should be, because I think it's like 26 businesses. But I know all those people and I can connect with them. And so it's huge because they're all peers who are doing things similar. And then there are some who are serving the same ideal customer as I am. And so I'm bonuses in their groups, they're bonuses in my groups. It just is a natural thing. And it's natural because you're building a connection, right? You actually get to know them. And so, you can go on their podcast and just talk, and it can just be fun. Kind of like this, where you don't have to do anything. You don't have to pitch yourself. It's just a natural, well, obviously this makes sense. But obviously it's also important because if you're in the right mastermind, the leader of the mastermind it should probably be an influencer who's bigger than you. And maybe they will highlight you. They will be an affiliate at some point or something like that. Again, that's not why you do it, but it's one of the benefits you can come out of. And so, I know, I've had multiple people, some of my peers in the mastermind have said they want to become affiliates for me. I don't really launch, but they're going to become affiliates and just can send traffic my way. And that's great. And so those are obvious ways to connect with people that you should think about once you get to that level. Let's be honest. If you're starting out, you're not ready for a mastermind. Don't invest in a mastermind when you're starting.
I would agree.
Then you go to group coaching, then you go to mastermind is probably the way it works.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, it's been a pleasure as always, Tarzan, but I should let you go because you're in the middle of a launch and I'm in the middle of getting stuff ready before I go out of town, and my team will get mad at me if I don't, if I don't just knock out my to-do list this week. They'll be very upset with me since I don't have that much. So. Bless
them for holding you to what you said you were going to do.
Yes. I need a team. I need someone to hold my feet to the fire. So, that's been great. But Tarzan, this has been fun. Where can people,
as always,
where can people find you? Where can, what's the best way for them to connect with you if it's for email copy or anything else?
You can connect with me at tarzankay.com. That's where I'm just like redoing my website right now. So, I was like excited for them to see all the new fun stuff, not redoing. Some extensive rewrites, not redoing. I redid it last year.
I redid it within the last year. So.
Yes. I relaunched it, full rebrand and everything on December 1st last year. Okay. So this December 1st, well, maybe not by then, but it has a beautiful update. But what I would actually say is go to tarzankay.com/Bobby. And you will find a collection of promo emails that you can swipe. Bobby will tell you, I write the most swipeable emails around until Bobby came along.
Yep. True story. I actually have an email that I've saved from Tarzan. She responded to one of my weekly emails. There was a lot of cussing involved. And then she said, the student has become the master. I'm just going to frame that one so that if anyone says Tarzan is the person for emails, I'm
yeah.
I learned everything I know about email from Tarzan. So if you don't like him, blame her.
Thank you, Bobby. And I meant it. So Bobby's best emails used to be like based on Tarzan's best emails. Now Tarzan's best emails should be based on Bobby's best emails. So if you go to tarzankay.com/Bobby, you will find a 10 email promo sequence that you can swipe for yourself and be as good as Bobby may be.
Well,
make sure you send it to him and tell him the I am now the master.
Yes, definitely do that. Look, I want everybody on my list and who listens to this to become a master email.
Same.
And it's fantastic to do. I think email is the most powerful way to communicate still. So I'm glad that's part of the reason I think we connect so much. We get
totally.
Thank you for being on, Tarzan.
Thank you, Bobby.
A pleasure. And listeners, that's it for this episode of the Online Genius Podcast. I will see you on Friday's Foundation Friday episode. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.